Welcome to Chi Tales, where secrets slip, lies unravel, and the truth always has a twist. Real stories, raw confessions, shocking betrayals. Drop a comment if you've ever caught a red flag too late now. Let's get into today's tale. My parents took my son's therapy budget for something more urgent. My sister posted about her self-care spa days. When I listened to her bragging, she called him just sensitive. I lost it. My revenge made them both irrelevant. I got him sponsored therapy through her ex's foundation. I'm Adrienne. I'm 43. A single mom living in Asheville, North Carolina. What started as a plea for support for my son's mental health turned into the most hurtful betrayal I've ever experienced by my own family. They made me feel like I was asking for too much. Like Callum was exaggerating his pain. When I found out where the therapy money went and what my sister had to say about it, quietly unraveled. But instead of screaming or pleading, I got even, in a way they never saw coming. They underestimated me. And more importantly, they underestimated how far I'd go for my son. I never imagined being a mother would look like this, raising Silas on my own, scraping together bills, managing school pickups, juggling work deadlines, and somewhere in between. Being his entire emotional safety net. He's 12, sensitive in ways that make the world seem too sharp for him. It started with nightmares, progressed to anxiety attacks that left him trembling under his blankets, and then the silences. The kind of silences that aren't peaceful, they're too loud to ignore. It broke me, his school counselor, Ms. Rains. Ms. Rains referred us to a child therapist. The initial consultation was promising, but pricey. $180 a session, the clinic recommended. Bi-weekly appointments. That's $360 a month. My job as a paralegal at a modest law firm barely stretched to cover rent and groceries, let alone specialized therapy. I hesitated before asking my parents. We weren't a warm and fuzzy family, but they always said they'd be there when it mattered, so I told them everything. I laid it all bare, the panic attacks, the nights I'd hold Callum while he sobbed into my shirt. How he begged me not to make him go to school sometimes. Evelyn, my mother, didn't even flinch. She clasped her hands like she was at a church potluck and said, "You know, your father and I always plan to help with special needs. Of course, we'll pitch in." It felt like a miracle dot for 6 months. They sent over a monthly payment directly to the clinic. Wasn't warm love, but it was the kind of practical help that saves lives. Callum was starting to smile again. Not the polite smile he gave strangers, but the one where his whole face glowed. We had hope again until the call came. I still remember where I was, Walmart parking lot. Late March, I had just picked up paper towels and Silas's favorite cinnamon. Granola. The voicemail from the clinic was polite, professional, but devastating. The most recent payment for Silas's sessions didn't go through. We'll need to pause future appointments until the account is settled. At first, I assumed it was a mistake. But I checked my email and found that 2 months of therapy hadn't been paid. Confused and panicked. I called my parents. My dad didn't pick up. My mom did. Her voice was overly bright. "Oh yes," she said. "We meant to talk to you about that. We had a little situation here." That little situation turned out to be a full remodel of their guest bathroom. Your father slipped on the tiles. He could have been really hurt. So we thought it best to get everything redone. The quote came back a bit higher than expected. Italian tile, custom cabinets, you know? So we had to dip into that account. She said it so casually, like she'd returned a borrowed casserole dish late. "You used the therapy fund?" I asked. "Oh," she said, sighing like I was being dramatic. "We figured Callum had had a good run. He seems better. And besides, you always find a way." I hung up without saying goodbye. I didn't cry until I was parked outside the school. Watching Callum walk toward me with his backpack swinging and those wide, hopeful eyes. That's what broke me. Not the betrayal, but how little they thought of him that weekend. We met for lunch, an attempt at pretending we were still a family. Callum came with me. He was quieter than usual, sketching something with a mechanical pencil while we waited for our food. Then came Tessa. My sister has always been aspirational designer handbags. Botox at 35, vegan when it's trendy. She strolled in late, her heels clicking, phone in one hand. Sunglasses perched on her head despite being inside. She barely glanced at Callum before launching into a story about her self-renewal weekend at the Umstead Spa. My soul was absolutely vibrating, she said, as if it was a universal experience. Then she said the words that rewired something in me. Well, I mean, Callum is just sensitive. Kids are so coddled these days, he heard her. His hand froze on the paper. His shoulders curled inward. I felt something rise in my chest. Rage, grief, helplessness, all wrapped in one sharp point of focus. I stood up. I didn't yell, didn't flip the table. I simply looked at my son, put my hand on his back, and said, "We're going home." Their stunned silence followed me all the way out the door. I didn't speak to them again for weeks. I scrambled, cut corners. I took on freelance paralegal work for a corporate lawyer in Atlanta, working late into the night after Callum went to sleep. I stopped buying anything that wasn't essential. We lived lean, but we managed 2 sessions a month again. Then one day, coworker mentioned a community health grant through a nonprofit she used to volunteer with. I looked it up. It was a foundation that funded youth mental health resources, especially for families experiencing financial hardship in North Carolina. And guess who was listed as one of their executive board members? Theo, Tessa's ex. They'd broken up after 5 years. Messy. From what I'd heard, I met him once at a wedding years ago. Quiet, thoughtful guy. I remembered he'd worked in nonprofit leadership, but not this. I didn't say I was Tessa's sister. I created a clean application and attached everything: letters from Silas's school counselor, a note from his therapist, even parts of his drawings that expressed his anxiety visually. I didn't expect much, but 3 weeks later, I got an email. "Dear Adrienne, thank you for submitting Silas's application. We were moved by his story and admire your dedication as a parent. We're pleased to inform you that the foundation will be sponsoring his therapy sessions for the next 12 months. I had to read it 3 times before it sank in. The same day, I received a personal message from Theo. "Hi, Adrienne. I just wanted to say how glad I am that we're able to support. Silas, I remember you from Tessa's cousin's wedding. You were wearing that blue dress, right? You spoke so kindly about your son back then. Some people talk about kids as burdens. You did, Tessa, and I didn't end on great terms. But reading about Callum was a reminder of the kind of work that actually matters. I hope this makes things a bit easier. Asterisk, I stared at that email for a long time, and then I smiled. Not because of Theo, not because of revenge, but because my son, a sweet, sensitive boy, was finally going to get what he needed, and the very people who dismissed him were now completely removed from that path forward. Received a message from a woman named Danica through a mutual friend. Danica had dated Theo briefly after Tessa. She worked in early childhood advocacy and had seen Silas's drawing in the foundation's newsletter. She asked if I'd be open to participating in a local art therapy workshop panel as a parent speaker. I hesitated. Wasn't a public speaker. I wasn't even someone who liked being looked at for too long. But then I thought about Silas. I said yes. The event was small, held at a library downtown, filled with parents, a few teachers, and nonprofit organizers. I told our story. I talked about what it felt like to watch your child unravel, and how lonely it is to be dismissed by the people who are supposed to care the most. After I finished, I saw someone in the back of the room stand up. My breath caught. It was Theo. He nodded at me. Nothing grand, just a quiet gesture of acknowledgement. I nodded back, and that's when I realized something. I hadn't just gotten revenge. I'd built something better in the process. My parents were still trapped in their outdated thinking. Tessa was drowning in her own curated life, but Callum was healing. I was stronger, and we were surrounded finally by people who saw him, who saw me. Not as a drama queen, not as a charity case, But as a mother doing her best, refusing to back down, it was sometime in late Evelyn when I got the first envelope in the mail from the foundation. Not an email, not a phone call, but an actual envelope with a wax sealed dot inside was a simple thank. You note for speaking at the panel, okay? Along with a printout of a message board thread from the event, where other parents had shared their takeaways. One comment in particular stood out. I felt like I've been yelling into the wind for years. Listening to that mom talk about how her family ignored her son's anxiety, it made me feel less alone. I wish someone had said that to me 5 years ago. I read it 3 times. Cried a little, quietly, sitting on the back steps with a glass of iced tea and Callum's cat rubbing against my leg. I hadn't realized how much I needed to hear that I wasn't just flailing in the dark, that I hadn't made it all up around the same time. Callum was invited to join a summer workshop at a studio space in Weaverville just outside of Asheville. The building was an old converted barn, surrounded by wildflowers and community gardens. Every Thursday afternoon, a group of 12 kids worked with 2 rotating therapists and an art instructor. They painted, built sculptures, made papaya masks. Things that looked simple, but were structured around emotional expression and self-awareness. Callum loved it, and not just the projects. He loved being seen as a whole person, not a nervous kid, not someone to be hushed or brushed aside. He made friends, even laughed out loud a few times. For him, that was a big deal. I would drop him off, wait in the garden cafe next door, okay, and sometimes chat with other parents. I started recognizing their stories in mine. Different details, same core ache. Then, sometime in mid-July, my mother showed up at my door. I hadn't seen her in person since the therapy fund incident. She wore one of her tailored jackets, sunglasses perched on her head like a prop from a soap opera, and she held a pie. It's classic Evelyn. Appear, calm, carry, baked goods, and never acknowledge the elephant in the room until it's sitting on your chest. Thought you might want this, she said, holding out the pie like it could undo everything. I didn't take it. I'd like to talk to Callum, she said. No, I replied evenly. You can talk to me. Her lips twitched slightly. You're really doing this? Keeping him from his grandparents? No, I said. You did that when you decided the new bathroom tile mattered more than his mental health. Her face darkened. It wasn't like that, wasn't it? She looked tired, then just for a moment like she realized the playbook she'd been using for decades wasn't working on me anymore. I know we hurt you, she said, but you've embarrassed your sister. Theo's board is talking. She says you made her look like a monster. I actually laughed. She did that herself, I said. I'm just not covering it up anymore. She left without another word. Left the pie on the porch, though. I threw it away after that. Things quieted. I didn't hear from Tessa again. Not directly, but one of her Instagram posts popped up on a friend's account. She had apparently started a new blog called Healing with Tessa, where she offered emotional alignment coaching. The bio said, helping. You find your truth through curated balance and essential oils. The audacity. I showed the screen to Callum one night. After he'd asked why we didn't go to Nana and Grandpa's anymore, I guess some people have trouble telling the truth, I said carefully. He looked at the post, his eyes scanned it. Then he shrugged. I think I'm okay with that, he said. They don't really get it anyway. That night, as I tucked him in, I noticed something taped to the side of his desk, a doodle he'd made. A drawing of a bridge made of patchwork fabric. Underneath it, he'd written in his neat block letters, "You don't have to fix where you came from to go somewhere better." I stood there, staring at it long after he fell asleep. Callum was still going to therapy. He still had bad days. Panic flared when things got overwhelming or when someone raised their voice unexpectedly. But he was learning tools. He was standing up straighter, finding language for his fear, and slowly claiming his place in the world. And even though my family remained distant and bruised by their own egos, I had stopped missing them because I was building something stronger. Something that didn't rely on guilt or obligation. I was building a home where Callum could breathe. And nothing, not tile floors or spa hashtags, was going to shake that.